Most business owners get sucked into the day-to-day chaos. We get swept away by the river of activity that's going on. And we just never break out enough to build tomorrow's business, never break out enough to shift gears like we talked about before. And so we need the intentionality, we need that clear vision, but then we need an accompanying meeting rhythm. We need annual, quarterly planning meetings. We need monthly review meetings where we're checking in on our progress for the long-term stuff.
Climbing up, there's a struggle, tension in the air. But the underdog prevails, we here to declare. To the top of the mountain where champions stand. Failures can't break us, we taking command. Yeah, it's a journey, climb to the peak. Scaling businesses, who it ain't for the weak. Growth is the game, we play it real tall. From the bottom to the summit, we rise, never fall. Interview the legends, success stories told. Risepreneurs, hearts made of gold. Strategies unfold, in the struggle grace. Hardship and challenges, yeah, we still embrace.
Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the Risepreneur Podcast, a show dedicated to all entrepreneurs and business owners who's looking to grow, scale their businesses, to go to the next level, and ultimately exit at the highest valuation. Today, we have a guest. His name is Brett Gilliland. He is a co-founder and CEO of Elite Entrepreneurs. He is a business growth specialist and a strategic advisor to seven-figure entrepreneurs. Brett, say hi.
Hello, Boruch. Nice to be here with you on the Risepreneur Podcast. I love what you guys are doing, and I'm honored to be a guest today.
Thank you. The honor's here. Thank you for making time for us. And again, as mentioned before, we're looking to create awareness and make business owners understand that there's other ways for growth because again, this whole world is multidimensional. It's not black and white. So a lot of entrepreneurs find themselves working a lot of business and not really making that progress. And from my understanding, you're focusing on seven-figure entrepreneurs and they come to you because they reach some kind of plateau and not able to get to that next level because initially as founders, things were good. They were able to delegate some of the work, but ultimately got to the point where they're not able to keep up or their team is experiencing a lot of turnover or the quality work starts to diminish because they're not able to manage the processes correctly. Is that
correct.
How you position?
There's a plateau that often happens early seven figures. Sometimes they get to 1.2 million or 1.3 or, sometimes they're really good at sales and marketing and they drive the revenue up to 2 million. But organizationally, the way they structured things, their processes, they sort of cap out what that business can produce and they hit a plateau just like you described.
Yeah. Let's mention some other things that are happening in entrepreneurs' life that make them resonate with our message. What are they also experiencing besides kind of losing control of what they have and feeling burned out, no time for anything? What other things are they experiencing in life?
Well, some of them, many of us, I'll put myself in that same bucket. Many of us feel, you hear terms like imposter syndrome or just this underlying anxiety that all of it could come tumbling down at any minute. There's this, like I've built this thing, but it's like a house of cards and, one bad move and the whole thing starts to crumble. So there can be a lot of anxiety around that. A lot of business owners neglect themselves personally, their personal care, as they're giving so much to trying to keep this thing going that they've built. They might have trouble with their physical health. Maybe they don't get the exercise that they should be getting. Maybe they're not sleeping enough. Maybe they're turning to food and just trying to deal with some of the anxiety and not eating very healthy. There's just a lot of things that can happen in the self-care arena, including mental and emotional health, that gets neglected often by these business owners that put the problem solving and everybody else first, and they often put themselves last. And then, you mentioned burnout, but it's not just a overworked kind of burnout. It's sometimes a self-neglect thing that happens. I don't know. There's lots of things that happen. I could keep going. I don't know how.
Yeah, why not? People need to understand that this is not normal. I speak to entrepreneurs and they think that working 60, 70 hours a week, neglecting themselves and their relationships, their families, that's part of being an entrepreneur. No, if you do that by design and it's your choice, you want to, okay. A lot of entrepreneurs, they just feel that they cannot take time off because things start to fall apart, right? That
That's
there's
right.
fires. So I believe it's good to mention and make them aware, because everything I believe starts with awareness, right? Like, hey, something wrong with this picture. Things that I thought should be the way they are, but in reality, I designed it. Those are my decisions that created the current atmosphere.
Yeah, I think the very starting point of the business, there's this initial startup cost, and there's no capital, right? Probably no capital. And so it all comes out of time. And there's only one person or two co-founders. And so we get our businesses off the ground by sheer force, by sheer willpower, by tons of work. And we think that trend has to continue. Once that initial thing happens and you get it working, I don't know if I could put a rule of thumb to it, but I wouldn't want to see 60 to 70 hour work weeks for any more than I have to. But if I had to throw a number out there, let's say the first 2 or 3 years to get that thing off the ground. But then if you continue that kind of schedule because you're like, well, I still feel that I'm able and there's always plenty of work to do, I think we just get into a pattern of this is what it has to be. And it doesn't. If you have proved a viable model where the market says, yes, I want to pay for your product or service, and there's enough of those customers, you should be able to settle into a more reasonable work routine that doesn't have you neglecting yourself or your relationships. So I'm with you, Boruch. We have too many overworked, self-sabotaging entrepreneurs out there.
If I understood correctly, also by looking at your LinkedIn profile, you co-founded Elite Entrepreneurs, right? Is David your brother? Because you share the same last name?
David is my brother, and he and I both, this doesn't have to be the case. We happened to go get a graduate degree. I got mine in 2001. He got his in 2002. But the degree, our area of expertise or study is organizational behavior. And so it has to do with the business or the organization as a system. And there's all these parts that make up the business: people, processes, systems, how information flows, how we determine what the right decisions are, like decision-making process, like all of this happens, and we call it our business. But it's one big body and it has all these different parts. And so our expertise is understanding that as a whole and how you make adjustments to that or how you make additions to that in order to get different outcomes. So if you're not happy with the results you're getting today, you have to make changes in the system that you have today. And we are exceptionally good at the system changes that need to happen in this early 7 figures, right? Within the whole body of your business. There are some maturing things that need to happen, some changes, some adjustments, and that's what we do. So yeah, he's my partner in crime, and we have a small but mighty team, and we have been privileged to help hundreds of 7-figure business owners over the past 12 plus years now.
There's a reason why I mentioned this. Not everyone can work with relatives, keep each other accountable, and actually take things to the next level. I wanted to touch also on your experiences. Some might ask, who's Brett? Like, why should I kind of listen to him? Besides that, you helped already hundreds of businesses. You started your career in the HR world, right? You were HR manager for HP.
Yeah.
There, and then ultimately transitioned to Fusionsoft. Anybody who knows Infusionsoft, it grew as a software company, right? Like
a software company, and I engaged as a consultant in 2008, actually. Was a consultant at, and now it's called Keep. Infusionsoft rebranded to Keep. Anyway, I consulted there, and they were at 7 figures, like we're talking about. And I won't say this was all me. In fact, I wouldn't even say the most of it was me, but my organization development expertise was part of that journey. And we went from 7 figures to 10 million to 30 million to 100 million. Right? We hired hundreds of people. We won Best Place to Work awards in the US. Like, we grew well. We had an amazing team and culture. And a lot of our small business customers who were buying our software saw how well we were growing, saw how we were scaling, experienced our team. We're like, how are you guys doing that stuff? Let's pretend that they were raving fans about the software and it helped them do marketing and sales and all the stuff that they were trying to do with the software. But they saw what we were doing organizationally, they saw how we were scaling, and they were like, can you teach us that? And that's actually how my business was born, was out of that success story. I put co-founder, not just because my brother's my partner today, but because Clayton Mask, who's the CEO of Keep and formerly Infusionsoft, he and I are the ones that built this little training and coaching business that now I have called Elite Entrepreneurs. So we grew up inside this business of mine now, Elite Entrepreneurs, grew up inside of Keep. And for 6 years, we grew a 7-figure business inside of this $100 million business, right? And then I bought that business and we spun it out. But like, how can I be an advisor to these 7-figure business owners? Because I was an advisor to 7-figure business owners. One of them happened to be Clayton Mask at Keep, and we grew with me right there in the cockpit with him. I didn't have my hands on the steering wheel, but I advised him, was a thought partner to him, built all the hiring and onboarding processes at Keep, led the strategic planning, facilitated the strategic planning processes at Keep. So all this organization development processes and systems around people, that's stuff that I led. And it's what we now teach business owners who are trying to do that same scaling thing.
Awesome. So all the systems, processes, methodology is actually what made Infusionsoft Keep. That the growth that you experience,
part of enabling that growth story was all the work that we did in these areas.
Yes.
And then customers asked us to teach them, and we're like, okay, how would we teach it? So we put together the model, the method that we would teach. And now we've built implementation coaching around it. And we have a whole community of 7-figure business owners who get together regularly and are masterminding with each other and learning from us. And so, we've built a whole support, content, coaching, and community for 7-figure business owners based on our own experience of doing it.
Yeah. And I see how much it's needed, especially when you reach that level where your growth kind of slowed down. Yeah, you were going up until this moment and now you kind of plateaued, not just to wait until you feel a burnout, like connect with somebody who can brainstorm with you, strategize with you, because a lot of entrepreneurs find themselves alone, I believe. There's nobody really out there that they can go and share the ideas. A lot of them vulnerable ideas that people do not want to show. I don't know who can I share this with, right? So again, like you mentioned, imposter syndrome, all that stuff. So having somebody on your side that you could bounce ideas from, like they say, one knife sharpens another. You can basically make that breakthrough. So can we dive into high level, not too detailed, into some of the methodologies that you use? Let's say, what would be one of the first things we would engage in? Let's make a scenario. Let's say I have a home services business. I have a crew of, let's say, 10 technicians. We make a couple of million in revenue, right? So now I'm feeling that I can go scale to the next level and I don't know where to start, right? So I have a team under 10 teammates and I'm bringing you in. What would be one of the first things that we're going to look at, and what would be more or less like overall flow, just to plant the context into our audience's mind of what it takes to scale the company to the next level?
Yeah, it's a great question. I'm going to slow down a little bit here so we can speed up later. But you asked what some of the methodology is to do the scaling work. I want to use an analogy. I think we've talked around it well, but sometimes analogies help to drive it home. So if you've ever ridden a multi-speed bicycle, at first you start out in a gear that's appropriate for starting out, right? Like you just get started. Well, sometimes in our businesses, we start out, we're in a gear, we're pedaling. And then we think we have to get more yield out of that bicycle, to go further, faster, we pedal harder. And we're like, I'm just going to pedal like crazy. And that's where the burnout happens, right? 60, 70 hour kinds of weeks. And it just harder, grind, right? Well, on a multi-speed bicycle, that once you've tapped out that gear that you're in, then no amount of pedaling is going to get you really good returns. Incremental returns don't come from pedaling even faster if you're in the same gear. And so you have to shift gears. Once you shift, now we feel a different thing with that bicycle. We're like, oh, the same effort or even less effort will get me further faster, right? Like I get more yield out of that bicycle once I'm in the next gear. So in our businesses, there's a gear or stage change on the 1s and 3s of revenue. So this is one of our frameworks. On the 1s and 3s of revenue, there's a stage change. So there's something from startup, 30,000 to 100,000. When I'm just self-employed, I'm trying to figure that out, right? 100,000 to 300,000, there's a tripling. That's the next stage. And now we got to shift gears again, 300,000 to $1 million. 1 to 3 million, 3 to 10 million. Every time, 10 to 30, 30 to 100, and so on. So every time you're tripling in the output of that gear, now it's time to shift gears and go to the next place. And so for every stage, there's like a key thing or a set of things to figure out at that stage to be able to shift gears. Okay, so that's some backdrop. Now, because I specialize in the 7-figure range, right? There's actually two shifts in there that I just said, 1 to 3 million and 3 to 10 million. So that's all backdrop. Now, I submit that the 1 to 3 million, there's 2 models we use, or 2 methodologies that we use to describe the changes that need to happen. One change is individual. It's personal to the business owner. It's a leadership adjustment.
Mind shifts.
The other change is an organizational change. So there's a lever for leadership, and there's a lever for organization development, or call it like business capabilities, or processes, systems, however you want to talk about that. So we have a model called the Elite Growth Method that's about the organizational change, and we have a model called the Elite Leadership Model that's about the personal adjustments I need to make to go from being involved in doing everything, or at least being involved with everything, to now learning how to lead people and stepping out of the day-to-day delivery of the product or service. So you asked where we start. So I thank you for letting me talk about that whole backdrop. But where we start is with the foundation, and that is referenced in both of our models. So the organizational model, the very top of our model, it says set the vision. And in our leadership model, there's 3 hats for the 7-figure business owner: set the vision, build the team, get the resources. That's the roles. They got to get rid of all the other roles, but they need to keep set the vision, build the team, get the resources. So those 2 models intersect with the foundation of setting the vision. That's where we start every time, no exception.
Right. Sorry, I'm interrupting. Before we continue, what's the difference between build a team and get the resources? Team and resources.
Good question. Yeah, build the team is specific to the people resources, or the human capital. Get the resources is about, we need the financial runway. We need to make sure that there's enough fuel for us to do this thing. If we have a vision, we could get there with people, but we can't get very far without the financial resources.
Resources. Okay, now I understand. Thank you.
Good question. Yeah. So please, you can direct this however you want. I think I've set the stage pretty well.
Yes. Yeah, great analogy. So far, it's amazing. Let's continue.
Okay. So we start with setting the vision. This is the place where, and I think most business owners today understand the value of a vision, right? Like they at least know there's like a best practice in their mind. Like we should have a vision, we should have a mission, or we should have values. And that's absolutely true. I subscribe to that. But I think most people don't understand how to do it in a way that's going to set you up for the best possible outcome. So we subscribe to mostly an adapted version of what Jim Collins teaches in a book, a very lesser known book that he wrote years and years ago called Beyond Entrepreneurship. So he wrote Beyond Entrepreneurship. It was the first book that he was ever a co-author on. He wrote it with his mentor. His mentor's name is Bill Lazier, and Bill has passed away. But on that book, you'll see the author, James C. Collins. Now he goes by Jim Collins, but James C. Collins is the co-author with Bill Lazier on this book called Beyond Entrepreneurship. And he says the number one responsibility of every leader is to set the vision. And I subscribe to that. And that's where we start, setting the vision. So what is set the vision? As he lays it out in the book, it's the purpose, the values, and the mission. Now, he doesn't lay it out in that order. He starts with the people first, the values part first, and then he goes to purpose and then mission. I'm more of a Simon Sinek follower in that regard. I want to start with why. Why are we doing this in the first place? Of course, we want to make money. Of course, we want to sell good products or good services. We want to, have great customers. But what's the driver behind it all? What's the higher reason or purpose or significance? What are you passionate about? That sort of thing. And I believe, and I've seen in every business model, in every industry, there is a higher level purpose that can be defined. And it becomes more exciting than just the transactional piece of we're here to make money. So I'm an investor in my business, right? I'm an owner. I want the financial returns. Of course I want that. But it would be far less meaningful to me if we didn't have a higher purpose that we're driving on. And it'd be less exciting for my team. They wouldn't be as engaged. If it's just, hey, I'm doing work for a dollar, that transactional kind of relationship is really easy to break. The next guy comes along, or the next gal comes along with a better offer for them transactionally, and they have to take it if it's all about the transaction. But if there's a higher purpose, there's fuel, there's meaning, there's excitement around that. And so we start with purpose. So setting the vision is getting clear on the purpose. It's getting clear on the set of values or the right operating norms, core beliefs, philosophies, like however you want to frame that. But it's the reason that this group of people work well together. We all share a common set of values. And then we move to the very specific mission that we're up to. We don't want a vague mission statement that's like, hey, we're out to create world peace or, maximize client satisfaction. And I'm not trying to make fun of some of the missions that are out there, but I am trying to say they lack the specificity. They lack the complete ability, meaning I want a destination-oriented mission that when we're done with it, we all know. We put our flag at the top of that summit and say we arrived, and then we go on to the next mission, right? I want a defined objective for the mission. So that's where we start with anybody that we're ever helping. And these things, the purpose, values, mission can help six-figure businesses, but the primary work of their stage is learning how to get and serve customers at scale, right? Get off the ground, learn how to provide predictable leads, learn how to deliver that service or those products to a growing number of customers. That's really what the work of that stage is. And then when you're at seven figures and looking to scale, if you haven't done this foundational work of purpose, values, mission, you must do it before you can move on.
So I'm wondering, would that be too late to start after you reach that milestone and not have this from the get-go? Because what I see also, it's not easy for people to change. They are not necessarily adapting to the values that a founder will try to implement within a company. And the level of transparency and aligning with values are causing some of the teammates actually leave because they're not ready for that scale. And if they stay, they will be interrupting the flow of new people that coming in because, if the culture, the attitude is not where it needs to be, it's impacting others.
Yeah.
So you don't think that would be too late and kind of set that from the get-go, go through that exercise and right away bring teammates
in a perfect world, I would do this stuff from the start. In fact, I had the extreme privilege of spending 2 half-day sessions with Jim Collins in his Boulder, Colorado lab.
Nice.
As we were growing Infusionsoft, we took the 10 of us, the leadership team, and we spent 2 half days with him. It was extraordinary. One of the things I took from that was like, why wouldn't we teach these principles? Jim Collins usually helps bigger companies, right? And I'm like, hey, let's help them be great from the start. And to me, $1 million is a start when compared to $1 billion enterprise, right? Mm-hmm. So let's help them be great from the start instead of, great by choice stuff that he teaches is for bigger companies. And he agreed. He's like, yeah, it would be awesome down here. And most of my research is in larger companies, but let's do it great from the start. And I hear you saying, yeah, even like the very beginning, ideally, perfect world, yes. Do that from the very beginning. It would serve you extremely well. However, not having it does not keep you from figuring out the product market fit, right?
I see.
The first thing is there enough demand or enough need for my product or service? Can I convince somebody to buy from me, right? Like, is there a product market fit? Yes. Okay. Now I can afford to hire somebody. Now I got to get good at selling repeatedly. Now we figure out how to sell repeatedly. Now the next stage, 300,000 to $1 million, I need consistent lead generation. It's one thing to know how to go out and beat the bushes and sell enough to keep our $100,000 to $300,000 business afloat. It's another thing to have consistent lead flow that I can count on and start to scale the operations of my business. That's what that 0 to $1 million journey is all about, is those things. And I've seen more businesses than I can count, and so have you, that have not done any of the vision setting, but they get this thing going and they get it off the ground. So yes, it would be better to do it from the beginning, but it's not essential to their survival in the beginning. And what I'm saying is once they get to 7 figures, they can keep growing without a foundation, but it's a lot harder to scale effectively and sustainably unless you do this thing. And so I kind of say, would have been best to do it early on from the get-go.
Yes,
if you haven't done it yet, it's absolutely, we're going to stop right here and get this done before we go any further.
Got it. Thank you for elaborating on this.
Yeah.
So once the first thing is in place, right, then you're shifting to team. Once the vision is in place with purpose and mission, core values, you going into building your team.
That's right.
Is there specific assessments you have to get them through? What's your blueprint to bringing somebody that is here to stay once you bring him to the best of your abilities?
That's a great question. And I want to, earlier I said, hey, we basically have two models or methods that we're working from, a leadership model and an organization development model, right? So build the team is referenced in both places. But organizationally, there might be other things to do before you start building the team. And financially, we might not be in an affordability state to actually add to the team. So we can go down this path that you're asking about how to hire well. I'm more than happy to do it. It's something that trips up a lot of business owners, and that'll be fun. And just making the clarification that setting the vision might not be leading to build the team next. Organizationally, you might have to do some other things first. But within the context of the three roles I have is the seven-figure CEO or the seven-figure business owner, set the vision, build the team, get the resources. Those aren't necessarily sequential, right? Those are my all the time hats, right? So if I need to be getting the resources for us to survive, I'm going to do that before I build the team. If we're running out of fuel, I'm going to spend less time on set the vision activities. I'm going to be making sure we've got fuel, right? So they're not sequential. They're just the three hats that I need to wear. So having said that, I love your question. Let's get into to build the team best practices. Probably the biggest thing that I run across, Boruch, is we get business owners who know they need a person. They're like, I need a salesperson, or I need a fulfillment person, or a technician, right? In your home services business, I need a new technician. Okay, we know that, but we aren't always clear about the value. We aren't always clear about what success looks like in the role before we post the position. Instead, what we do is we say, I need a technician. So we go to a job board and we type in, HVAC technician or AC, I guess that's HVAC, whatever.
Plumbing, electrician,
Yeah, electrician. Gotcha. I type in the job that I want to post, and I see the way that other people wrote it. And then I go, I'll take those job responsibilities from, I like those bullets. I like these previous experience bullets. I like some of the language from that company. That company looks a little fun. I'll take some of the why work here language from that company. And we put together this hodgepodge of a job description. I call it a Frankenstein job description. And we put out our help wanted sign. And we say, help wanted. And we sit back and we wait for people to line up. And we say, of course they're going to line up because I put a lot of thought and energy into this job posting, right? I just grabbed a few things because I'm trying to be efficient, and I just throw it out there and I cross my fingers and I hope that it works. So the philosophy we teach and some of the frameworks we use all have to do with getting super clear about who we are as a business, right? The values we talked about, the purpose we talked about, that makes up our shared identity. We all care about this cause, and we all like to work a certain way together. We have these values that we share. So that shared identity should be like just oozing from every line of my job posting. That should show up in my language. It should show up in the order of things that I talk about in the job posting. I shouldn't lead with, hey, it's this much an hour and these are the responsibilities and this is the past work experience. That's like a government job posting. It's horrible. There's no life to it. So we want to breathe a little bit of life into our postings, and we want that shared identity, those culture elements of purpose and values to be at the heart of the whole thing. We want to lead with that purpose. We want the right people to be excited about why we're doing this in the first place. We want the right people to take note of the language we're using because it fits with our values. And then eventually we'll get to, if you're still reading, because you're the right person, let's talk about some of the things you've done before. Let's talk about the experience you have. Let's talk about the specific measurable results and measurable activities that are expected in this role for you to win. So way down the page, right? We finally get to it, but we usually start out by just putting the requirements together, piecing it together, maybe asking ChatGPT and saying, help wanted, and cross our fingers. So that's where I would start. Will you lead us in your questions where you want to go from here? Because I could talk.
Yeah. I just want to reflect on this fascinating idea. Yes, you take the best of all worlds. You're constructing a job description. You also making sure that it's aligned with your vision and the purpose and values. And you structuring it in such a way that it starts basically with why, so a person would say, hey, that's me. Yeah, that's my experience. That's what I can bring to the table. And then ultimately you will end with their duties, responsibilities, and what it would take.
You want those measurable success criteria ahead of time. I hear business owners frustrated all the time. Like, I hired the person to be my marketing coordinator. And I just, I know what that means. And we tried to hire for experience, but then they get in here and I'm not getting what I need out of that role. Did you say up front what you needed? Were you clear first? Because we don't drive to total clarity. We get enough clarity to move because we do that as business owners. We're like, I'm clear enough, let's move. But
Yes.
That's not clear enough when you're trying to match a perfect candidate with your exact requirements. Not clear enough to just say marketing coordinator. That's not enough. We have to get real clarity about the specific things we need them to produce week in and week out, or we need them, the behaviors or the activities that we need them to do over and over again in exchange for dollars, right? We're saying, here's our value, here's what we're paying. How do we know your value is there? The value exchange needs to be represented in a very measurable way. And we should have that before we ever post the job.
Do you go and make sure that all the training material, SOPs, KPIs, all set up before you do that job posting? Or it's something that you would do on the fly? Because not necessarily all the SOPs in place when somebody reaches that level. They get away with verbal trainings, verbal KPIs, and constantly checking, micromanaging their teammates. So now that they're transitioning to scale, do you make sure that all those in place before you go recruit? Or
Again, we're back to the ideal, right? The ideal would be all of that's built out. But practically, most of us are hiring somebody to help us build out those SOPs. Like the first time we hire a marketing person, we don't have all the SOPs. We may not even be good at marketing. Maybe we were the technician in our home services example. Like, we're the expert at that, but we don't know anything about marketing. So we hire somebody to help us figure out marketing. And in that case, we didn't build out SOPs. It would have been a waste of time, right? So we're hiring somebody, and we need to communicate this with them. I am hiring you to help me build this out. This is a new muscle for my team. We don't have it today. That's exactly why I need you. But we should be clear about what success looks like in the role so that we can not just post for it, but then we can evaluate for that in the interviewing process.
Perfect.
So yeah, I've done 4-hour training sessions on hiring alone. We're not going to get to all those things here. But philosophically, you're trying to put out a love letter or the bat signal, like if you know the Batman reference, right, in popular movies here in the US, the bat signal goes out. There's hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people in the city, but that signal is for the right person, right? There's only one person we're going for.
Yeah.
And you should write your job postings in a way that the right person goes, oh, they're speaking to me. That's not just a broad help wanted. This is a very targeted, this is for me. It's in my language. They know exactly who I am, and they're calling me.
Yes.
So anyway.
And you open up time for whoever's doing recruitment, HR, not to go through random applicants that don't even read descriptions, just apply everywhere. Being very specific and asking to follow specific instructions get you those people that actually took time and very intentional to come join your team.
That's right.
Okay.
And you're putting up hurdles all along the way. And some of those hurdles have to do with how well they fit with your values. And some of those hurdles have to do with how well can they do the job, right?
Yeah.
We want to keep both of those in mind.
Yeah. And if they don't follow those hurdles, those instructions, guess what? Same thing will be once you hire them. They will be doing exactly the same thing. And then you'll be complaining and tolerating unacceptable behaviors.
That's right.
Awesome.
That's right. But back to your question about SOPs, it would be nice for them to be fully built out and then you're hiring to those. I do want the role-specific KPIs. I want that clear first because I don't want to hire somebody to a vague expectation. So I want role-specific KPIs clear. I call it big three. And here's the most important measure, the next most important measure, the third most important measure. I want total clarity on that. That's what justifies creating the role in the first place. I'm willing to carve out of my budget this many dollars in exchange for this value, right? So I'm creating a box that says marketing coordinator, since that's the example I used before. But what am I getting for that? Oh, well, I need, X number of social posts every week or I need X number of leads coming in, or I need whatever it is, whatever the KPIs are for that specific role. I want total clarity on that so that I can post that in my job posting, and I can ask about relevant experience in the interview process that matches those expectations. And I can even put in like experiences or tests, competency tests in my hiring process where possible, not always possible, but where possible, I want to see their actual work. I want to see it in action so that I get a better gauge for whether or not they can do the role.
Yeah. And that also kinds of positions an applicant once they get boarded. The expectations already said that they will help with creation of all the SOPs. And
That's right.
as soon as you also identified what are top 3 KPIs, my understanding you also positioning that yes, you might have other KPIs, but they're not as important as those 3. So
right.
this would be your Pareto principle, 80-20 rule, right? These
That's
3
right.
will produce the 80% of the results that we would be expecting from you. The rest is just will kind of compensate for the 20%.
That's right.
Okay.
I rarely see a job posting that has 3 responsibilities, right? There's always a bulleted list of here's all your responsibilities. But at the end of the day, how we know that the person's successful in the role are those 3 measures.
Yeah.
And again, I call them big 3. You can call them whatever you want. But I know, and the candidate knows exactly, this number 1 is most important, and it's 50% of the weighting. And this next one maybe is 30%, and the last one's 20%. But I know this makes up the value exchange for the pay that I'm getting every paycheck, right? The value exchange is I get paid, and in return, I deliver these 3 measures.
Yeah.
And yeah, there's other responsibilities, but this is how I know that I'm earning my pay.
Yes. And a lot of employers are not positioned that way. They know exactly
not.
what they're paying, but they're clueless about what they're getting back.
Exactly.
So this way you're positioning exactly, hey, I'm paying you $5, I'm getting a dozen of eggs. You know exactly what you're getting back. At least 90% of the value that they produce, you know exactly where. Awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's not totally self-serving for the business owner. Think about what it's like for the team member to go home on Friday to their loved ones, significant other, friends, whatever, and say, I'm knocking it out of the park. I know exactly what's expected and I'm killing it. That's a different place than, yeah, I'm the marketing coordinator. I'm working hard. Everybody can work hard, but we don't always give that clarity of here's what winning looks like. And when we do, it just increases confidence, or it increases the clarity that I need to step it up. I need to make some changes. And it saves us from a bunch of weird performance conversations later with like, where they're like, oh, I didn't realize, or I didn't know, or I've been working hard. Yeah, but hard work isn't getting the results. Well, what results? You never, it's not clear enough most of the time.
Got it. And also could be a disconnect. Employee might think I'm killing it. You ask the business owner, they're like, he's not meeting my expectations. What happened?
Right.
The priority of task is not aligned between the leadership and the teammate. Awesome.
Right.
Can you touch on a point where, at which point you also see that transition from when they're much smaller up to 1 million, right? There's a lot of generalists in a team wearing multiple hats. Yeah. Is that the point also where you say, you know what, let's stop with the generalists and focus more on specialists? Like we're getting a social media marketer. That's only thing they're doing. Those are the top 3 things that they will be responsible for. Is that also when this shift is happening as well?
Yeah, it's a great question. I wouldn't put an exact line in the sand and say, here's the exact point where you go from generalist to specialist. But that is the stage, this 1 to 3 million stage, where the specialists are starting to come into play. And you're doing that very strategically. And it's frustrating as a business owner. Back to your role to getting the resources. You don't always have enough resource to get the number of specialists you need, right? At least it feels like I could use a marketing person, a salesperson, a product person, a service, like I could use 4 specialists, but I have enough budget to hire 1 person. Which one do I hire, right? Like that's a question that comes up a lot. But it is the point where ideally we're getting clear on this chunk of work. I'm organizing work and I'm creating a box for it. And that's becoming more and more specialized as I grow.
Awesome. When at the time of interviews, prior to interviews, do you also recommend assessing on values, on behavioral styles to make sure that the job position aligned with their makeup?
Yes. One of my favorite practices of all time, I call it the values phone screen. And you can use technology, you can automate some of this, but I like the values phone screen. Instead of, a lot of business owners will go from a stack of resumes, right? They'll filter it down and say, okay, I've got, 10 candidates that I really want to talk to. And they'll schedule 10 hours of interviews, basically. And some will say, well, yeah, I only do 30-minute initial interviews. Fine. But by the time you get somebody in and you're greeting them and you're interviewing and then on the way out, like you're basically spending an hour with people on average. So 10 hours of interviews, I think instead you should schedule 10 to 15 minute values phone screens, because in that 10 to 15 minutes, I can get a gauge for whether or not they're a good fit with our team, with our values, with what matters to us. And then I don't have to waste any more time on evaluating their skill set. They could be the best skill set, the best performer in the world, but if they don't fit well with my team, if they don't believe what we believe, if they don't fit with our cause, that's not going to be a good long-term solution. That might get us some short-term results, but it's going to take a jackhammer to our cultural foundation. It's going to mess it all up. So I'd rather invest 10 to 15 minutes up front, times those 10 candidates. We're looking at a couple of hours, 10 to 15 minutes a pop, maybe 2.5 hours at 15 minutes each. And that's a better investment than 10 hours to find out that 6 of these people shouldn't even be spending any more time on. So I'd rather do it that way. It's one of my favorite practices. Before we do any interviews, I want to just do a little phone screen on the value specifically, not the skill set. Mm-hmm. So what does that look like, Boruch? It looks like, hey, Boruch, thanks for applying for our job. I saw your resume. I'm impressed with what you have here in your experience. We've learned that rather than waste any of your time or any of our time on an interview to understand your skill set and experience better, it's better for us to do a quick check-in on our values and make sure there's enough match for us to do that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask you for each of our values. Let's pretend we have 7 values. Okay. I think there should be 5 to 7, as few as 3, maybe 7 on the high end. I've seen 10 work, but I think that's a lot of filters. So I'd recommend 5 to 7 values that are core, right? Like these are non-negotiable. We live by these. We hire to these, we fire to these. These are core values in our company. So I'm going to share one of the values with you. And I want you to tell me 2 things. I want you to tell me what that value means to you. They just tell me what it stands for, what it means to you. And then I want you to give me an example of you living that value, preferably in a work setting. And a recent example is better than an older example. Okay, so our number one value is we genuinely care. Boruch, as you tell me what we genuinely care means to you and an example of you demonstrating or living that value, I'm going to hear a difference in your voice if that's meaningful to you. And, the quality of the example, I guess there's some subjectivity in that. All of this has some subjectivity, but I'm going to get a feel pretty soon as to how connected we are on a values front. And that's a way better use of my time than having you come in for a first interview based off of an impressive resume.
I love this because you also, while hearing them respond, you can see how they're able to communicate, because you also kind of creating pressure. Yeah. It's you made me go and you created tension. I have to now explain myself what it means to me and how it's being expressed, and then let you judge me based on what I will respond with. Oh, that's an amazing way to qualify even before getting into the interview.
That's right. No, we're not going to do interviews. I don't want to waste your time, and I don't want to waste my time. So this is just a qualifying step. And like I said, some people have taken this to the point of automating, using some automated emails or a web form or some way of just, you can ask those same questions and have them fill it out and you can read it. But you don't get the same feedback as if we're on the phone or on even better, like a Zoom call, right?
Yeah.
I get to see them and experience them. That's a great way to screen people before I invest more time in interviewing.
Love it. Thank you for sharing. That's an amazing insight. Again, just to be sure that the audience is aware, values is what's important to us. There's sets of principles that the company is running by. Ideally, every single individual within a company is aligned with those values, so we all treasure the same principles. So when certain fires happen and there is no systems for it, on how to handle it, you would rely on values for somebody to come in and take care of the situation until there's a process in place for it. When values are not aligned, it could cause even bigger fire than it is.
Well said. Yeah, well said. Values is so critical, and yet most of us don't pay enough attention to hiring to that way. And here's how you can tell. If you're a business owner and you have these thoughts in your mind, man, more people just means more headaches. Or I'm tired of dealing with employee issues. Or those types of things where like the people are the problem and I hate these employee issues. And if you're in that state of mind, you have a team that's not well aligned to a set of core values. I have a team that's built all on these values, not surprisingly. This is stuff I teach, but I don't have to deal with drama. I never have to deal with employee issues, and they all make decisions. I love how you talked about values being your filter. They all make really great decisions because they make them the way I would make them, based on the same value set, right? So yeah, well said. Really
They're
well.
like, they become your extensions. It's like your body limb, right? The reason you can raise your hand so fast, because if you think about it, the hand is like at least 15, 20 pounds. Can you pick up a dumbbell that fast the way you raise your hand? Reason you can raise your hand so fast because it's aligned with your brain. The brain is the leader. All the limbs are your teammates. If they're aligned with you, you all going in the same direction. You're reacting the same way. You're expecting the same things. You treasure value in a similar way. Anything that transpires within a company. Yeah, I'm very big on values, and I don't know why.
I love it.
Yeah, I don't see why. Again, ideally, it would be one of the first things in place. But yeah, I don't know why they don't teach that as like, hey, before you start your business, even you going out, evaluate where your values are. What are you driven by? I love that exercise with the vision that you had that puts you in the right frequency. And then whoever's not aligned with that frequency, you don't want to be part of your extension.
That's right. And the original question you asked had to do with like assessments. And I know there are values assessments, culture assessments, there are behavior assessments, attitude, personality types. There's a bunch of assessments. And I'm not going to say that none of them are worthwhile. I am going to say I have a hard time finding an assessment that is specific to our value set, right? And so we have to get good at assessing for values. I would never skip assessing for values. I just don't know how good an off-the-shelf tool is going to help me assess for our specific values.
Yes, I see why also, I believe, because again, where's that level, right? For example, if we say compassion is important because I'm in the medical field and I'm dealing with patients, where's that measuring stick? Where's it placed? Is it at 50%, 60%? And what's compassionate to me might not be compassionate to somebody else. So
right.
Yeah, I see how this can be.
Yeah, again, there are a lot of helpful assessments out there. I'm not going to bag on any of them. But generally speaking, I don't think you can replace the need for us to get really clear about what our values look like in action, and then really good at assessing that as best as we can in candidates. We can't replace the need for us to be good at that with an outside tool. We could supplement with another tool.
Yeah. And that removes business owners from complaining that there's no good workers out there, because you're strictly relying on the resume and experience, and people already polish their verbal skills because they've been on interviews and they would know what to tell you in order for them to get in. But then once you get them in, next thing you know, people fall out during boarding, during training, during doing the actual work. So you can really filter out all that unnecessary noise. Good stuff. Brett, I believe we're going to have number 2 coming up, because we just touched on the HR world. And again, this awareness and the level of detail the audience is listening to see how extensive it is. And you said you have a 4-hour training just on HR side, right? So hopefully everyone sees the benefit. There's a lot of things we're uncovered right now. If just implementing that alone and being aware of just this alone, what the effect that it would produce on a business. So I know we're coming towards the end. I would love for you to share your last words, something else you want to mention. I also mention how people can reach out to you if they choose to. We're going to include it below this video. And I hope we can do part 2 where we can actually focus on the actual scale, what happens then.
Or the organization development side. Yeah. Let me just say a word on the organization development side, because it's similar to personal effectiveness. If you want an effective organization, you need 2 main levers. You need intentionality and you need discipline or rhythm. Like you need built-in routines and structure. So on the organization side, we need to set the vision, but we're doing this balancing act between working in the business and working on the business. Most business owners get sucked into the day-to-day chaos. We get swept away by the river of activity that's going on. And we just never break out enough to build tomorrow's business, never break out enough to shift gears like we talked about before. And so we need the intentionality, we need that clear vision, but then we need an accompanying meeting rhythm. We need annual, quarterly planning meetings. We need monthly review meetings where we're checking in on our progress for the long-term stuff. We're also dealing with the bubbling up, the bigger stuff that bubbles up from our week-to-weeks dashboard meetings. We need these dashboard meetings to review the KPIs. We need, some people like daily huddles. So there's some in the business meeting rhythm work that has to happen and some on the business meeting rhythm work that has to happen. But it all needs to be aligned by this bigger picture, like vision work and then strategies, annual priorities, quarterly priorities. There's just a bunch of organizational work that has to happen. So anyway, if we get to do a part 2, that's what it would be on, is how do we do some of that better? And what I would say to all the audience here who wants to grow, everybody wants to grow. They want it to be less chaotic. They want it to be more balanced, have the life and business that they want. And what I would tell you is don't lose hope that it's possible. You totally can. I've seen self-proclaimed blue-collar workers, who turn wrenches. I've seen them turn their $1 million businesses into $10 million businesses. I've seen it happen too many times to think that's not possible, right? It's totally possible. It's totally doable, but you have to learn the right things and you have to do the work. And if you're stuck in the repetitive process of just doing the work of the machine that you already have, right, the machine that you've built, then you're not going to be able to break through and make the change. So got to shift gears. It does take a different set of activities and you learning and growing as a leader, but it's totally doable. And we'd love to see you. We'd love to see you all do it. It's fun.
The impossible is possible.
That's right.
Yes. So how would people find you?
So yeah, our business is Elite Entrepreneurs, but that's a horrible URL. So our website is growwithelite.com. So GROWWITHELITE, growwithelite.com. You can also find me on LinkedIn, and we have a podcast called the 7-Figure Journey Podcast. 7-Figure Journey Podcast. Thank you so much, Boruch. It's been a pleasure to be on your show.
We'll include those in the description of the show, and I will also ask my teammates to reach out to schedule part 2, see what additional gold nuggets you can share there. Again, you don't have to go through this alone. Leverage mentorship. That's the fastest way to grow. There's no need to break your head over things and feel that you cannot make any breakthroughs. Again, the impossible is possible. You just got to find a way, just like when you started a business, you found a way to make it work and bring it to $1 million, again, which most of the companies can never get to that level, right? Based on stats, people that are hungry to get to that level, only 7% of companies basically get above 1 million in revenue. All right, awesome. Thank you, Brett. Thank you for joining us, Shane. Thank you for all the shared information. Look forward to this next session.
Yeah, it was extremely fun. Look forward to it as well.
Thank you.